All right, well, good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining the Canadian Celiac Association's Understanding Oats webinar tonight. And I'm Melissa Secord, and I'm the Executive Director for the Canadian Celiac Association and your host, your MC tonight. And our session tonight has been generously sponsored by one of our 2019 Gold partners, West Oak Naturals, the company that brings you Only Oats. The Canadian Celiac Association, or fondly known as the CCA, is a national voice for people adversely affected by gluten and is a registered charity. And our strategic priorities are access to safe food through advocacy and education, improving diagnosis rates and management of the disease through educating the healthcare and other healthcare providers across Canada, improving quality of life through research and science-based information, generating awareness for a greater understanding of disease, and finally, strengthening the community through support and resources. Some of the resources we can support you with are CCA publications, like our Better Living Gluten-Free that goes out monthly, and our Canadian Celiac magazine that's published 3 times a year. It's bringing you information to empower your life, along with our client support desk that is manned by a registered dietitian 1 day a week. And we also have support through a peer support network of trained and experienced volunteers. And CCA is a charity. Every day, thousands of Canadians are wondering what is making them so sick. And CCA is here to support them, to keep on the work that we're doing every day through advocacy, research, education, awareness, helping those who need help. We hope that you can support us through a donation this year, especially during our festive campaign. So before we start, I just want to review how the webinar works. And tonight, if you are one of our great participants, you'll be entered into a draw thanks to Only Oats. So those who are actually on the call tonight, live, we'll randomly pick a winner after tonight's webinar. And the winner will receive a case of Only Oats, a 6-pack, which consists of rolled, quick oats, steel cut oats, and flour. So thanks very much to Only Oats for donating that prize. We'll notify everyone by email and the winner and to let them know who's won. And so just as I said before we get going, just want to let everyone know that they're muted so that everyone can enjoy the speakers. If you have a question, use it in the question box. We'll ask our speakers to respond to as many of the questions as we can at the end of the session, her session and his session. And usually we receive a lot of questions, so just we'll try and do our best to cover them during the presentation. We're recording tonight, so in case you've missed something, we are recording it and it'll be shared on our CCA YouTube channel, and we'll share a link with those who've registered for the session. And at the end, tomorrow, you'll get an email from us along with literally a 2-minute survey. Please tell us how we did tonight, and so we can improve on the experience as well as learn about any new topics that you'd like to see. Okay. So our speakers tonight, our first speaker up will be Mike Marshall, and Mike is the Chief Operating Officer of West Oak Naturals. He's, as the COO, he lives in Saskatoon and with his wife and 5 children, and has been in the agriculture and food industry for 18 years in various capacities, from sweeping the floor of grain cleaning facilities, running the equipment, doing buying, trading, and overall general manager of multiple processing facilities. Mike is a true entrepreneur, starting numerous companies, all with the same value proposition: trusted food. Today, he is the COO of West Oak Naturals and the owner of the brand Only Oats, Canadian-grown purity protocol gluten-free oats. And after Mike, we'll have Jessica Wu. Jessica is a registered dietitian with the Pediatric Gastroenterology Clinic at the Stollery Children's Hospital in Edmonton, Alberta. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in nutrition from the University of Alberta and completed her dietetic internship at various clinics and hospitals across Alberta. Jessica enjoys combining her passion for cooking, counseling, and research to help children with celiac disease grow and thrive. All right, so just before we get into Mike's presentation, we're going to run a poll here. I'm going to launch the poll, and we're going to ask you to see if you are avoiding gluten, do you eat oats? And if everybody can click one of the buttons to let us know. And you just have to basically click on the radial button. Oops. Like it looks like you've got some automatic. All right, so I'm going to end the polling here, and I'm going to share the results here. So it looks like 3% of you are consuming commercial oats, 66% are consuming gluten-free oats, and 28% haven't tried it yet since the diagnosis, and we've got a small percentage that is causing some concern. So we're gonna stop sharing. And Mike, I've got to somehow get I'm going to move to the previous slide here. All right, Mike, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, we can get going. And if you need to just go back and hit
control
pause,
your slide.
fine too. Sure. So good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here tonight representing our Only Oats brand and having a little discussion about what you can expect from oats and what you can expect from gluten-free oats, both purity protocol and assorted oats. So I guess, Melissa, if you
do I need to go back?
Let me. Yeah, maybe just maybe a couple back. Yes, please.
Okay. I think me clicking.
Even if you want to go up to slide 3, if you can.
All right. Sorry, everybody.
That's okay. This is good because it makes me talk fast, and then nobody will get bored.
All right. Let's see if we can. Here.
Right. That's good.
Is that the right one?
Go from there.
Okay,
yeah. That's great. Thanks, Melissa. So my little presentation here is really to describe the difference and point out the differences between purity protocol oats and sorted oats. And I guess to roll it right back, for the most part, except for those folks that have tried oats and have symptoms, even though the oats may have been gluten-free. That's unfortunately for those that are affected by that, oats are not suitable. But for the vast majority of folks, oats are gluten-free. The problem that we have is the contamination of gluten-containing grains in the production of oats that make it difficult or impossible for the consumption of commercial oats. So what we would find when we get sorting through commercial oats, that your everyday run-of-the-mill product that comes out of unmanaged gluten fields, is quite a high contamination of wheat, barley, rye, or triticale in the field. And when that product is taken into the elevator, it's basically cleaned to get foreign materials out that aren't the same, I guess, size and density as the oat, which then it goes for further processing to the milling operations, making either your rolled, quick, steel cut or flour, which is then the flour is then made into extruded cereals. That contamination is there. That's why it's suggested that folks that are gluten sensitive or have celiac are not to consume commercial oats. So that kind of brings us to the next question of, well, what's the difference between purity protocol oats and sorted oats? Well, to be quite frank, it's really the difference between starting with the least amount of possible contamination with using purity protocol, and then using all of the high-tech cleaning and sorting equipment to catch the anomaly in the purity protocol oat, rather than sorted oats are just commercially produced oats that are then cleaned and sorted to have the gluten contamination removed. Now, I will say, since I've started into the business, I think technology's come quite a long ways, but it's come quite a long ways in both practices, both purity protocol processing and in the sorted oats. There's quite a bit of different data that's out there, and as you can, if you could go to slide, I guess we go to slide 3, please.
The next one?
Yeah, Melissa, can we take the poll off of the screen? Is that possible?
You just have to close it on your end.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right, so I guess the slide's moving along here, so I'll try to catch up to it.
Okay.
So
here, I can back
pause.
up.
Yeah, okay, maybe go back to, we had slide 3, let's go back to slide 4, and then I'll try to keep up.
Let's go here. We start at slide.
Be the next one, 14, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Sorry, everybody. We're just getting through our technical glitches here. There we go.
So if we can take a look at this quickly. So technology is used to separate the grain according to color, size, shape, and density. And this is not just with, well, I'm going to have to be quick. You know what?
You've got, you know, I'm just gonna think what we've got, everybody, is we've got, we've got, oh geez, we've got some, you've got a slide, an automatic slideshow here. So I'm just gonna do a quick transition. Let's see. Sorry, everybody. We're gonna just try and duration here. Let's see. Apply to all. All right. Let's see if we can get this going here. Looks like you had some automatic transitions in there. So, and let's go through here. All right, let's see if
while we're getting to that side, I'll just talk to it. So the optical and mechanical sorting piece, again, the same process is used in both purity protocol and clean to purity products. I guess the main difference is really in the production of the grain, the actual oats, and it really boils down to the end game is to have the least or zero amount of contamination from the field coming off of the combine and going into the process. The idea is to have pretty much reduced to nothing right from the start in the production of the oats. And then what we do in the purity protocol process is we still put it through the same high-tech cleaning and separation and optical sorting as they do in the clean to purity, except for we're starting with our bar being as close to zero as possible. So we're starting out already at that point, and then we're using the technology to remove the anomaly. Okay, so I'll go through, I guess maybe some of the points, if not all of the points of what purity protocol means. Now, purity protocol is just that. It's a protocol of production that eliminates or reduces the risk of contamination of gluten-containing grains, such as rye, wheat, barley, triticale. And how we do that is the growers that are signed up on contractual basis to do the production we have a field history that goes back a few years, 3 years, I think, in some cases, and that basically showing that there would be no residual from the year prior that might have a gluten-containing product. And then from there, the grower then selects gluten-free registered planting seed. It's actually the highest standard of seed available because it actually exceeds the Health Canada pedigreed for the seed because of the allowable other seeds that are in. The growers that are producing the gluten-free planting seed are gluten-free growers themselves, so as well as pedigreed registered planting seed resellers. After the product is planted and is growing, there's in-crop inspection for obviously gluten-containing grains. Then once the crop comes to the maturity and ready for harvest, the product is then harvested with segregated equipment or documented, thoroughly cleaned equipment from swathers to combines to trucks to haul the grain. And then obviously we're having the growers collect harvest samples all the way through the production, and then that gets sent in for inspection. And then once those samples are pre-approved, the mill is looking for the actual milling quality as well as the gluten content of those samples. Those are agreed to be hauled in on based on the quality of those samples. And then from there, what ends up happening is the grower will then clean the grain at a segregated cleaning facility and remove all of the foreign material like chaff and wild seeds that might be there. And then from there, that product is then shipped into the mill, and at the ramp of the mill, samples are taken from the truck that are randomly taken mechanically. And this is done on a statistical manner so that there's no chance for risk of having a skewed sample. So it's very statistically accurate on every truck. And if there's more than one gluten-containing grain in 4 kilograms out of the first load of the year, then that truck is then rejected and it's not accepted at the mill. So if you can take that in terms of how much that is, that's representative of if you were to take that, there's 40 metric ton in a B train, and you're taking a 4 kg sample out of that statistically, and if there's one kernel, it's rejected. So there's it's very intense. So now that is statistically done. Does that mean that there's more than that in the load? There could be, but that's where further on into the process, multiple points through the milling process, there's statistical sampling done and ELISA testing. And with our product, every tote that we bring in for packaging, we get a C of A that tells us what the percent or what the gluten-free parts per million are. And every tote that we produce our bags out of, we have a C of A that tells us it's less than 5 parts per million in every tote. So we know just from statistics that it's very difficult to have a less than 5 parts per million result on every kg of product produced, other than doing it through a purity protocol process. So now, if we compare that to what is being done on the clean to purity, if you can think of this as the grain comes off of the land that's not monitored for production, you could have still be pedigreed seed. You could have I believe it's a 6 or 8. Now I need to kind of brush up on my seed rules here, but from the CFIA. But I think it's somewhere between 6 and 8 kernels in a kg that's acceptable. So if just from a planting seed, that then would be planted into the ground and then multiplied. So every one of those seeds that would be germinated would then produce, maybe 10 kernels. So if you do that over a 160-acre field, you can understand what the contamination might be of gluten. So then that product is then harvested and taken to the bin, which might have stored barley or wheat or rye or triticale at any point in the past. So from there, that product then gets loaded up and it goes to either to an elevator, which then resells the product to a larger oat miller, or it might go directly to an oat miller. And there is where we would see the high-tech equipment to clean and size and sort, and multiple color sorting machines, and that's how the product is made into gluten-free oats, with the hope that the size, color, shape, and density of the grains will be different enough that it will be cleaned to purity under 20 parts per million. So there's quite a difference between what happens prior to the oats getting to the mill, and I guess that's the best way to describe it. With purity protocol, I'll reiterate, we're trying to start clean and stay clean through the entire process, and then we're using the high-tech equipment to catch the anomaly. On the sorting, it's just regular old oats until it gets to the mill, and then they're relying 100% on the equipment to remove all of the gluten. So that's very much the difference between the two. I think we can move on to maybe the Health Canada slide, if you could.
Is that it, or the next one?
Yep. Yeah, this is good. So Health Canada requires oats and gluten-free products to contain no more than 20 parts per million. So we're relying on the equipment rather than the production protocol of the oat to make that claim. Now, that might be possible to hit a less than 20 parts per million, but I would wager, healthy wager, that to get to less than 5 parts per million or non-detectable on every kg, I don't believe that it's possible to do that unless you're using a purity protocol production. So maybe go to the CCA statement on oats. So the Canadian Celiac Association and the Professional Advisory Council state it is not aware of any published North American data that demonstrates the levels of gluten in oats have been cleaned using optical and mechanical sorting. So I would venture to say that it's not just only Oats' view of purity protocol, but I think consumer advocates like the CCA and others are very much behind the comparison of purity protocol to clean to purity. And I just want to reiterate, we've had this process for quite a few years, and statistically, the ability to hit that less than 5 parts per million is very, very accurate. Let's go to seem to have missed a slide here, I think. I'm sorry, everyone.
Oh, do I need to go back?
No, let's go to the comment from the piece of our friends at the Gluten-Free Watchdog.
Okay.
I just want to put this out there for all those folks that are listening in that are maybe thinking of trying a new brand or trying to find a purity protocol oat that's going to be suitable for them if they believe that this is the more safe option. Is that we don't want to just be sitting here waving the flag, buy only oats, buy only oats. I guess what we're saying is we really want you to have trust in your food. So feel free to reach out. It's probably not going to be real easy information for you to get directly from a brand, but there may be reasons for them not to give you that information. But if you reach out to an organization like Gluten-Free Watchdog, they do independent reviews and testing, and they have statements that they are standing by that really have the brands go to them and prove out where their supply is coming from, whether it's a legitimately purity protocol or if it's quasi purity protocol or if it's a blend of sorted and purity protocol. They'll have that information for you. But I don't want people to be shying away from eating oats because they think they're not a safe alternative, unless they know for sure that they're one of the small percentages that cannot tolerate oats, even purity protocol oats. So I guess that wraps up my, I'd say I've taken up more time than I probably should, but I want to make sure that I'm clear on the points. Really, we're looking to supply the purity protocol oats that are top quality Canadian grown oats from our gluten-free production oat fields to the dedicated gluten-free facility directly to your home. And we're excited to do that, and we hope to get awareness out however we can. Please feel free to ask any questions, and I'll hand it back off to Melissa. Thank you for listening to me ramble on and on.
And sorry, Mike, we had some interesting transitions in your slides, so I think it just we had to kind of work those through, but I just wanted to make sure we bring up the slide here from the Gluten-Free Watchdog on sorted oats. Tricia, maybe just before we move on to Jessica, Tricia, who's a dietitian down in the U.S., she's a pretty big advocate, and she offers some questions that people can ask the manufacturers, whether they use purity protocol, are they disclosing their testing, and do they disclose the assay they use to test the oats for gluten contamination? And we've got a link right there as well. just want to get to your kind of your last slides here. Well, we certainly appreciate your kind of walking through everybody of the purity protocol, because a lot of people do hear about it and are not quite sure exactly, what is it and what does it mean. Certainly, we thank you for taking good care of our food. So I'm just going to move on to just a final slide there in case anybody wants to get in touch with your team. And we will share the recording of the webinar so people can do some follow-up as well. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mike. And we'll definitely circle back with any questions that anybody has. So, and I think there is a couple of questions that we've got up on our screen. So great. So do we have Jessica ready?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. So
thanks, Mike. That was really informative for me and a good refresher on purity protocol and all that you do at Only Oats. So I appreciate it. So from my perspective, I was hoping to talk a little bit more tonight about what the benefits are of eating oats, what things we should probably consider if you do have celiac disease or you're avoiding gluten, but you do want to get some more whole grains into your diet through oats. We will review the Health Canada guidelines and what is recommended from Health Canada, and maybe just some creative ideas to start introducing oats into your diet. You'll also notice that I really like puns, so we'll just wait for this next slide here.
Yeah, it seems we've got some nice pauses in between our. Is that your next slide?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great. So, yeah.
A brief anecdote for you all, just a little bit about the history of oats. So oats are a whole grain, and historically they've been used in a lot of animal and human diets. We think that they were introduced into North America from Scottish and Irish immigrants in the 17th century, and they can be rich in a lot of nutrients, including fiber, protein, and carbohydrates. You may have heard about beta-glucan and the oat claim that it is a very heart-healthy way of eating. So oats can be outrageously healthy. They do contain a fiber called beta-glucan, and beta-glucans not only help to keep your cholesterol levels normal, but if you have high cholesterol, they may actually actively help lower your blood cholesterol. And then that lower cholesterol may reduce your risk of developing heart disease. You may have seen other sources of beta-glucan as well. So beta-glucan is present in barley, although that's not really helpful for those with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. And then certain mushrooms like shiitake mushrooms and some seaweed and algae also have beta-glucan, but oats are generally the highest source, and it seems like they're the most well-studied. Next slide, please. Oats have a low glycemic index. So what that means is when you eat oats, it prevents your blood sugars from spiking and then coming down really quickly. Instead, it's more of a gradual rise and then a gradual fall. And that can be helpful because it helps you to feel satisfied and full after you eat them. Or if you're trying to maintain a healthy weight, it might just make sure that you can keep a healthy and regular diet routine in at home, as opposed to feeling hungry all the time, even though you've just eaten something. And low glycemic index foods can also reduce your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. In addition, oat grain fibers can also help to normalize your bowel movements by bulking up your stool. So if you are having some constipation or diarrhea or some variable bowel movements, maybe some oat fiber might be helpful that way too. Next, please. So all in all, oats are totally amazing. Generally, oats have been linked to positively impacting many health-related conditions. So we talked a little bit about weight management in diabetes, coronary heart disease, and blood pressure. Of course, these diseases are multifactorial, and oats may not be a cure-all, but certainly we have seen very positive research when we talk about oats and general health maintenance. Next slide. So just a quick refresher, I'm sure you all are listening, are quite familiar with celiac disease. In case you're not, celiac disease is an immune reaction to gluten, which is a protein component of wheat, rye, and barley. And those with celiac disease can have intestinal damage when they do eat gluten. So at the moment, the only known treatment so far for celiac disease is to strictly avoid all wheat, barley, rye, and all of their derivatives or related grains like triticale and spelt, etc. So oats and celiac disease have had lots of research because initially it was thought that oats, being a whole grain that was kind of similar to wheat, rye, and barley, that they would not be safe for those with celiac disease. And it is true that the protein in oats does have some similarities to gluten, but in all of the research that we've seen, it doesn't seem to cause the same immune response, and therefore it doesn't seem to cause the same intestinal damage in those with celiac disease. So we would say that oats in their pure form are safe for people with celiac disease to eat. However, as Mike alluded to, oats unfortunately have a long history of being cross-contaminated through normal agricultural practices with barley, wheat, and rye. And so Health Canada and other research has also tested commercial oats to say that they often can be highly contaminated and go over that threshold of 20 parts per million, which is what we're trying to stay under when we look at something that is gluten-free or safe for someone with celiac disease. And so if you want a little bit more information from the CCA, a bit of light reading, you can look at the CCA's Professional Advisory Council's position on oats and a little bit of guidance that way, just through the celiac.ca website. So if you're thinking about introducing oats into your diet, it seemed like about 30% of the people on the call when we did the poll at the beginning had not yet introduced oats into their diet if they were avoiding gluten. So you can definitely consider introducing pure, uncontaminated oats when you feel like your health is stable. So it might not be something that we would encourage doing if you are actively having symptoms, because then we won't really be able to know if you are reacting to oats at all. So try to pick a time when you're feeling pretty good, you don't have any symptoms. Ideally, we want your celiac antibodies to have normalized or at least shown improvement. Again, if they are quite high, then it's kind of hard to assess what a normal level for you might be. And then if you're if you've lost a lot of weight or you've gained a lot of weight, or maybe you're talking about your child and they have had some weight or growth fluctuations, this may not be the best time to introduce oats. So try to pick a time where things are just kind of boring and plain. Weight and growth have been pretty stable. And then of course that you are already following an established gluten-free diet. So Health Canada has put in their recommendations that they would suggest a minimum of 6 months on a gluten-free diet before starting pure oats. And there is some limited evidence to support this, but it's hard to say that that's going to be a blanket statement that will apply to everybody. So we would just really recommend trying to follow up with your physician, your pediatrician, or your gastroenterologist, or your dietitian, just somebody to kind of give you a helping hand as you're reintroducing oats, because it may, you may want to introduce oats a little bit earlier for you if you have other intolerances or avoidances and you really want to get some whole grains in, or it might be something that you might want to wait a little bit longer till you're comfortable, and both of those are okay, just best to do it with a little bit of medical guidance. So as we have spoken about already, gluten-free oats are encouraged because oats are frequently cross-contaminated with gluten-containing grains. As Mike said, they can be grown on the same fields or farms as wheat, rye, and barley, and also share the same processing equipment. So generally, if you do have celiac disease, we really recommend, from a healthcare perspective, to avoid regular commercial oats, because we really don't know if those have been accidentally cross-contaminated or not. And we really suggest and encourage only purchasing oat products that are labeled as gluten-free, meaning they would have less than 20 parts per million of gluten in them. And we suggest including all oat products. So not only looking at quick oats or rolled oats or kind of oats in their natural form, but also anything that's going to contain oats. So breakfast cereals, instant oatmeal packets, granola bars, oat beverages, like milk replacements. All of these things would be okay and safe to eat if they have oats, but also if they're labeled gluten-free. Otherwise, we would typically recommend avoiding those. A little bit of the Health Canada recommendations are that in 2007, they did an initial review of all of the scientific literature and showed that people with celiac disease could eat gluten-free oats. At the time, the recommendation was to try to stay under about a quarter cup of dry rolled oats a day for children, and about a half to a 3/4 cup of dry rolled oats for adults. However, as people started to show that they were fine with higher quantities of gluten-free oats, this research was updated in about 2014, 2015 to show that there is no longer a limitation or a maximum for gluten-free oats. Next slide. However, this doesn't mean that everything is always perfect. Sometimes some people do have symptoms with oats. Now, we haven't seen a lot of scientific research to say that the oats are causing intestinal damage the same way that other sources of gluten would, like wheat, rye, and barley, in people with celiac disease, of course. But some people may still experience symptoms like bloating and abdominal pain. And one of the most common explanations for this can be a sudden increase in fiber. So if you feel like you've maybe started introducing gluten-free oats at a high quantity, or maybe you were really missing it and had oats for breakfast and had some instant oatmeal packets for a snack, and then also had oatmeal at supper, and you really like oats, maybe try eating a smaller portion, perhaps trying to cut it in half or start with that quarter cup portion and increase gradually. And if it is a reaction to having too much fiber all at once, generally your symptoms should improve within about 2 weeks as the body starts to adjust to having a bit more fiber. Drink lots of water as well, and that will help that fiber get softer and pass through. Next slide. However, if you feel like you've given it a good 2 weeks and you really are still having lots of symptoms, even if you're really cutting down on the portions and nothing else has been changing and your gluten-free diet has been really good, you may unfortunately be intolerant to oats, and we don't really have the research to support why that might be at the moment. It's a bit tough to know exactly what part of the oat could be an issue, but while you're introducing oats, try including other like naturally gluten-free starches so that you can get other whole grains in as well, such as rice, quinoa, or maybe some other starches like corn or potatoes, instead of mixed or processed foods like gluten-free breads, gluten-free crackers, and pastas. just in case those are adding up to potential cross-contamination amounts that could be causing you the symptoms instead of the oats. And then of course, as I had mentioned before, we do recommend close follow-up with your physician or dietitian just to give you another set of eyes to rule out other potential gluten contamination or reasons for symptoms. So I just have a couple more slides here. If you are thinking of some oat recipe ideas, these are some ones that I could come up with. So of course we have good old oatmeal, maybe some homemade granola bars, or trying to make a fruit crumble or crisp. If you haven't tried overnight oats, they can be a really easy way of getting oats in, because you just mix up some oats and yogurt, maybe some seeds or fruit, and you just leave them in your fridge overnight, and then they're nice and soft in the morning. You can definitely use oat flour in baking bread or making pancakes, and trying lots of different forms of oats, such as steel cut or rolled oats, oat flour. If you want to get creative, I've definitely put oats into a smoothie before, and it gives it a nice texture. It's really filling. You can also use oat flour as a coating for different sorts of meats. I know lots of families that use it instead of regular flour to make meatloaf or meatballs. And I haven't tried savory oatmeal yet, but I know a lot of other people who have, and they really love it, kind of the way you would make, say, grits or a risotto with some broth or some Parmesan cheese or an egg. So these are some different creative ways to use oats. And generally, if we want to review our notes from today, oats have many healthy properties that may decrease overall disease risk. Although people with celiac disease have to avoid wheat, rye, and barley, most people with celiac disease can safely still consume pure gluten-free oats. We do recommend only purchasing oats that are labeled gluten-free and would therefore have less than 20 parts per million of gluten. And then if you do experience symptoms with oats, you can try decreasing the portion, drinking lots of water, and reevaluating after about 2 weeks with your healthcare provider. I have some other references here. Of course, the Health Canada websites, the US Food and Drug Administration websites, Canadian Celiac Association as well. And then I think on the next slide, also just some scientific papers and, of course, Shelley Case's book on the gluten-free resource guides there. And there should be one more. Yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I know it's a bit late for some of the people on the East Coast, so I appreciate your time. And I would be happy to chat about any questions.
Well, thanks, Jessica. That was really informative, and we love your puns.
Oh, good.
Yes,
great.
We're going to have a talk about you doing some of our content for our social media.
Happy to.
Just before we get to questions, I just want to let everyone else know that we've got some upcoming webinars, namely actually Shelley Case, who you just mentioned, Jessica, on November 27th, so a week from tonight. We've got an understanding may contain statements and precautionary labeling, and as we unveil more from our market research study that we did last May on consumer behavior and the challenges that people have about trying to determine what is safe to consume. So please check that out. And on December 16th, we have our GF 101, learning how to navigate the gluten-free diet. It's great for people who are newly diagnosed or just have some questions. Normally they're a bit smaller sessions and they're a bit more interactive with our registered dietitian who mans our client support desk. So you can find those at celiac.ca and just click on the news events tab and drill down to the events. And just for everyone, if they want to reach the CCA, here's our phone number, an email you can reach us, or you can visit our website. And just another reminder, hopefully you've enjoyed tonight's session. And as you think about all the different resources and just the importance of helping people with celiac disease, we hope that you'll support the CCA. So we're going to pull up some questions here. And the first question we have is, I think this is going to be for Mike. By what method is the 4 kilogram sample taken? Is the 4 kilogram taken from all the different parts of the 400-ton load?
That's a great question, and maybe it was just how it come through the voice here, but it's actually 40 metric ton, so like roughly 88,000 pounds. And how that's done is the truck is unloaded into a holding bin, and as the product is taken up in a bucket elevator, and it's sampled by a robotic arm that takes it statistically exact every time, consistent through the whole load. And then from those 4 kilograms, they are then broke into 4 and then sorted. So it's very very thorough and very consistent, which is, if you talk with anybody from the Canadian Grain Commission, they say that is the most accurate way to do quantitative testing. And we know that this has been very accurate over time, just because of the performance that we've been able to achieve with the gluten contamination being caught when it is there. If it is caught there, it's then rejected. If it does pass and then goes through into the milling process and there's anomalies, they're typically caught in the production and then called out and then removed from the facility. So then it's definitely an accurate assessment of the load.
Okay. Question. Hi, my family uses quick oats and oat flour. Thanks for all your diligence. My kids miss the muffin mix and hope you'll manufacture it again. Do you know?
Yes, we have discontinued the multiple different mixes. Frankly, the numbers just weren't there to continue on, and we wanted to manage properly all of the ingredients to adhere to our strict gluten-free guidelines, and it was becoming more complicated and onerous to do that for very small batches. So we've since discontinued. However, we are very close to finishing the work on a all-purpose mix that can be used in muffins and in pancakes and in coatings, and generally used for general use, I guess, is the best way to put it. But we will definitely have our recipe will be available to you to make those products at home, and that's one thing I can say about having the brand is it's very good to work directly with the consumer. We love your feedback, even though sometimes it's painful to tell you that I'm sorry we can't help you with supplying multiple different mixes, but we did hear the folks that really liked those, and that's why we want to make our recipe available to all those that really want that specific product, whether it's the muffin mix or the pancakes. So stay tuned. We have more exciting products to come. So thank you for asking.
All right, you've got a fan out there, looks like. Questions coming on about Quaker Gluten-Free Quick Oats has a CCA certification logo. They do. And do you know if these are done through purity protocol? And they're also asking about Bob's Red Mill as a particular brand. So what I would do is, if someone can send that, we can take that particular question offline so we can get a proper answer from those particular producers, since they're not on the call tonight. But the gluten-free certification does undergo the most rigorous, standards, in the world, the manufacturing facility, and we're quite confident that the Quaker brand carrying that logo. Is gluten-free, is safe to eat, to consume. I don't personally know about Bob's Red Mill just because I'm somewhat new, but I'm sure I can get that answer from either that team or through some of the experts on our professional advisory council may have that answer for us. So I don't want to put Mike on the spot about other competitors and what their practices are. So how many, someone's asking about how many samples are taken from a 4 kilograms to be tested. Is that you? Did you already answer that question?
Well, maybe not clearly enough. So the type of test that's done on the unload is a visual test. It's visually going with your hands and visually looking at each kernel and identifying whether there's wheat, rye, barley, or triticale in the sample. So that 4 kgs is split up into 4 1 kg samples, and that's done on each of the 1 kgs. The further on in the process, in the milling process, there's random similar type robotic type sampling, so that it's very statistically accurate and consistent. And then those are ground up and tested, ELISA tested. And frankly, that's really there to catch the anomalies. It's very rigorous testing through the whole process. However, we're testing to verify that our protocol is working. So I don't want that to be confused for testing to make sure that we've removed all the gluten, because that's just a verification that we've done the protocol properly. So I don't want the two methods to be confused. I think the testing to find gluten and testing to pass are maybe two different ways of doing the testing, and we're very much on the overboard side of wanting to catch the anomaly. So hopefully that clears that up.
Okay, great. And certainly, I know one of our participants always looks out for the CCA trademark on a lot of products. If you're new to being celiac and newly diagnosed, it's a great way to start looking, for products that are safe, is looking for that CCA mark on packages and in food that you're purchasing. Someone's got a question. Maybe this is for Jessica. Why are our gluten-free foods so much more expensive than regular foods?
That's a really good question.
Maybe Mike can answer too as well.
Yeah, Mike, I remember you had said something previously about, how it also takes a lot of resources to be testing gluten-free food and making sure that it is safe. And I wonder if you would speak to that.
Yes, the testing to catch the anomaly is very, very expensive and very onerous, but absolutely necessary. That I would say is probably one of the lower on the bar of expensive. I'd say that's probably the lowest cost thing to do to make sure that our consumers are safe. It really is. It's a costly endeavor to dedicate your farm to 3 years of management to not have gluten. It's additional expense for infrastructure on your farm, different equipment. If you're committed to this program, it costs you as a producer to make this decision, and it's a fundamental decision. It's not. It really probably isn't an economic decision. I don't think that the majority of producers made the change to be a gluten-free farmer because it was financially beneficial to them. I think the majority of the growers have made that choice because someone in their home has been affected by celiac or a gluten sensitivity. So I would caution only from our side, like what I'm describing on the oat business and production of gluten-free oats, is that it's a significant investment in time. It's a significant investment in production, to extra expense that's been given up to do this. So frankly, you're having to compensate the producer for missing one crop every 3 years in their rotation, I guess is the best way to put it. So there's additional cost to the oats. The milling cost, the testing cost, yes, they're expensive, but it really starts with the commodity price. And when you're buying a purity protocol oat, you are paying a grower more than the typical oat grower would be paid. And I think that's where a lot of that is passed on to the grower. Whereas in the clean to purity, those mills they're just buying whatever commodity oat prices are. And those commodity oat prices are based on let's say the Chicago Board of Trade price, which was initially based on cattle feed. So that's kind of where I would point to the question is, you have to ask yourself, is it worth, paying the extra money for gluten-free oats that aren't purity protocol, because those companies are just taking regular old oats and putting them through a cleaning and sorting capacity, and then selling it to a brand or marketing them themselves and extracting a gluten-free margin out of it. Now, I would like to say that Manny, my partner, and Oscar, my partners, we've got the collective vision that we want our only oats products to be priced to the point where we're fairly compensating the people that support the business, and yet having a reasonable margin so that we can make it affordable for not just people with gluten sensitivity or celiac disease. We want them to be able to afford to eat the oats, but we also want people that don't suffer from those or try to manage those dietary needs. They shouldn't be hitting the pocketbook. So we're going to do our part in the food business to be able to take out, I guess, the extra fluff, and so that you get good value for the product that you're buying. And a lot of that is really because of what we believe in, and why I got involved in this business was really because, frankly, that's the only thing I could feed my little baby. She actually has an autoimmune disease called FPIES, which she's fortunately grown out of for the most part. But only oats was the only thing that sustained her life till she was 18 months. Regular rice pablum, she consumed that. We were in the emergency room, and we did that, I can't remember, 6 or 8 times before we had a diagnosis. So I knew that everything that was going into this bag, I knew everything about it. And there was no other food that I could really have trust in like I had physically doing this business. So I guess I want everyone that's consuming our oats to have that level of confidence, but I also don't want them paying through the nose for it. And I speak for my partners and all of the staff here, where we're all bought into that. That's our mission, and that's what we're going to do. So I can't speak for everybody in the gluten-free business, but there is some additional costs. But I think that we're doing what we can to make sure that the growers compensated properly, the costs that are needed to be safe are included, and there's safety in that, and still be able to provide a reasonably priced, safe product for you.
Okay.
I hope I answered that in that long-winded question, or long-winded answer.
you to, I just want to be super careful because it's 10:06, but there's just a couple of just nutrition related questions I'd like to get to Jessica. Is when first introducing oats into your gluten-free diet, what quantity of oats to start with, and should you eat it daily or less frequently in the week? That's for Jessica.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would probably recommend choosing a regular portion for yourself. So maybe a bowl of oatmeal, or choosing a granola bar, or something that you feel like you can enjoy and still feel satisfied with. And then, because our food generally takes about 24 to 48 hours to digest, I would probably recommend maybe introducing it once or twice a week for a couple of weeks. And of course, if you do feel symptoms, then you can kind of back down, see if the portion size can be changed. And if you are feeling generally fine after trying it 3 or 4 times, then you can increase that to being more frequent, maybe on a daily basis, and kind of check in with yourself. What I find can be helpful is maybe doing a bit of a food journal, or if you have a calendar, just kind of making a little bit of a note on the calendar of when you tried things, just so you can review that for yourself and see if there's more of a trend.
Okay, great. Someone has a question about when they see that a product contains oats and it's labeled gluten-free, how do you know if the oats are purity protocol or mechanically sorted? Do you have to contact the company? I know that the Gluten-Free Watchdog does have some list of manufacturers and different processes, I believe, on her website. But quickly, Mike, do you is it just as a manufacturer? Do you recommend just consumers call, even if it's like, would they?
Yeah,
you said you get a lot of calls from your office. People asking your methods.
Yeah, and I think it's very fair to if purity protocol isn't displayed on the package, it's very much your prerogative to call and ask. We get many people calling and asking, not just about the purity protocol piece of our offering, but many things like do you use glyphosate in your production? And of course we don't. We've made that statement quite some time ago. The growers haven't been able to use it in our purity protocol since 2014. So I'm just pointing that out because there's many questions you might have because you want to have trust in your food. I think you should feel free to contact the brand that you're inquiring about. They might not share information with you, but I would suggest that that doesn't mean it's nefarious, or it doesn't mean that they're not trying to tell you the truth. It might just mean that they don't want to give away their secret supply. So you might want to contact a third party like the Gluten-Free Watchdog. Trish Thompson is just fantastic, and she does a yeoman's job keeping an eye on all of us brands, making sure we're doing the right thing. So that true advocate for the community, and we thank her for everything that she's doing, and I think there's other gluten-free resources that Shelley's got a fantastic book, and I'm sorry, I'm sure there's lots of folks that I'm missing, but I think there's a lot of resources out there that can help you find out information if you don't get it directly from the brand.
Yeah, and just to note that Gluten-Free Watchdog is a U.S.-based registered dietitian, so her testing, I believe, really focuses on the U.S. But the last question we have quickly, and I think either one may be able to answer, is someone's noticed that the regular breads are so much bigger, larger than gluten-free breads. Why is that? And I'm not sure I don't think you produce bread, so I'm not sure if you can answer this, Mike or Jessica.
Yeah, I can jump in. So when you have gluten as a protein and you get it wet, you add water to it, it creates a sort of net structure. And then when breads rise and there's some kind of leavener or yeast to kind of puff it up, it is able to expand this gluten net structure into this big puffy loaf. And I think a big challenge with the gluten-free breads, as you notice, is they really don't have the same, or often they don't have the same texture, or they can have a different mouthfeel to them. And that's because there isn't one great gluten protein replacement for baked goods. So you might notice a recipe or a product has some rice flour, some tapioca starch, some potato starch, a little bit of everything to try to replicate that structure. And so sometimes it can be harder um, to from a food science perspective, to get the same size of loaf just because of the gluten and the ingredients. I think the other thing also probably has to do with affordability. And if you did market or produce a really, really giant gluten-free loaf of bread, or maybe one that would be the same size, it's likely that the cost of that loaf is going to be a lot higher. And so it's sort of trying to balance out what is affordable for the consumer, what is shelf stable, what can actually be produced. But I definitely agree with you. It can be really frustrating to kind of see that size and price difference in a lot of gluten containing versus gluten-free foods.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And that wraps up for our questions, and takes us a little bit over our time, but thanks for taking the time to stay over a little bit late just to answer those questions. So thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Mike, for taking the time out to share your insights and your knowledge. I know that CCA, we've featured the oat journey with farmers and millers, just to show the dedication to the purity protocol and what it takes. And so we can always share those resources with anybody who's interested in learning more about those stories. But thanks again, and thanks to everyone who joined us tonight. Sorry, we had just some technical issues with navigating the Mike's presentation, but hopefully everyone was able to follow along, and thanks for spending the evening with us. And watch out for that survey tomorrow, and coming to your email, and watch for the recording on our YouTube channel if you'd like to catch some of the information again and share it with your friends and family. So again, thanks to everyone for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us next week for our presentation with Shelley Case on precautionary labeling and our markets research webinar. So thanks everyone, and have a good evening.